Welcome friends to our session on Fratelli Tutti on this Fratelli Friday. Let me now try to explain to you in this brief moment of time the document. What I have been asked is to give first an introduction to the whole document, so I'll take half the time for that, and then into chapter 3 and chapter 4. First of all, something for you, an appetizer for you. What is this? Ice cream. What ice cream? Tutti Frutti. What is Tutti Frutti ice cream? Fruity, you know, fruit, and tutti, all. And that's how we get the name Fratelli Tutti. Tutti is all, Fratelli is brothers, and interpreted now as brothers and sisters all. And that's what the document is about. Pope Francis has given us this wonderful, amazing document, which actually, if we try to put into practice, will change the whole understanding of what it means to be a human being in today's world. As you know, he signed this on the tomb of Francis of Assisi, because Francis of Assisi, in a way, has been the inspiration for this document. And here you have the document before you, Fratelli Tutti. I have got it here placed. You can see it in my hand. Okay. The inspiration for the document. This document is 45,000 words, the longest encyclical of Pope Francis. And in this encyclical, he tells us what it means to have Fratelli Tutti, brothers and sisters all. The inspiration of this document, if you read it carefully, obviously, Tony, please change the slide. Yeah, is the Gospels of Jesus Christ. You can sense the spirit of Jesus in it. The obvious inspiration also is Francis of Assisi, and I have this quotation of Francis of Assisi for you from the document itself. Francis felt, that's Francis of Assisi, himself a brother to the sun, the sea, the wind, yet we knew that he was even closer to those of his own flesh. Wherever he went, he sowed seeds of peace and walked alongside the poor, the abandoned, the infirm, the outcast, the least of his brothers and sisters. Just try to take that in a little while. So while Francis of Assisi, we know him for his love for creation, the whole of nature, he had a special love, of course, for his own flesh, his brothers and sisters. So that has been the inspiration for Pope Francis. Before Pope Francis, or when Pope Francis was writing this document already, there was this break of this COVID-19. And he says, the COVID-19 pandemic momentarily revived the sense that we are a global community, all in the same boat. Once more we realized that no one is saved alone. We can only be saved together. So that's what we saw during this COVID-19, especially in the first 1-2 months, when all of us realized we need desperately to work together to overcome this pandemic that we had. And keeping this in mind, Pope Francis said, now we need not to go back to the old, but go back to not even just to the new, a new way of living our lives as human beings. The very title of the document, Fratelli Tutti, brothers, sisters, all. If you really take this title in and meditate upon it, we are brothers and sisters. Who? All. What is the expanse of the all? I was trying to get it into my mind, and I thought the best would be to give you an image of it. The image of the earth. If you look at this image, you can see no borders, earth seen from space. All of us are united as one. We are brothers and sisters. There's a story told of a disciple who goes to the master and says, when do you know it is day? How do you know when it's day? And the master asked the disciple, how do you know when it's day? And the disciple said, when you see the sun rising over the horizon, then it is day. And the master said, no. And the disciple thought a little better and said, when you can look at the trees and you can see them sharply and clearly, even if they are in a distance, then it is a day. And the master said, no. And then the disciple said, then you tell me, when is a day? And the master said, when you look upon every brother, every man and every woman and see a brother and sister, then it is day. And this is what our master, Pope Francis, is telling us, to look in a new way, to discover everybody as brother and sister. Now he has given us two lenses, and those are the first two chapters of the book Fratelli Tutti. Two lenses in which to see the rest of the book. Without these two lenses, you will not understand the book. And here you see his inspiration of St. Ignatius of Loyola. When Ignatius of Loyola gave us the spiritual exercises, one of the first exercises he gives of the Trinity looking down upon the earth. And what do they see? They see people of different colors, some at peace and some at war. And whatever is happening on the earth, this is the best way for a Christian to meditate. Look upon what is the situation right now. So the first lens that Pope Francis gives us is chapter 1, dark clouds over a closed world. The world that we have, we can see dark clouds over this world which we have closed up. So what are the dark clouds? I can't give you too many details in this time. The first thing he speaks of is war. And how do we understand war? Again, I give it to you through a picture. Here you can see a war-torn area. Take a look at this. When you're seeing this image, see yourself there. And your child, trying to save your child from the bombardment. This is what war is doing. Right now, in so many places over the world, people are going through war in one way or the other. And he said, there's not just these wars that we're seeing in different places. He says there's a war of hatred all over. There's a war of terrorism. There's a war of racial discrimination. And he says all these little wars, if you put together, these are wars, Third World War going on piecemeal. We don't have to wait for Third World War. It's already going on, and much, much worse, because spread all over the world in little places and in the smallest areas, people experiencing these wars. The second he speaks of, and that is walls. People are building walls. You hear of it in the papers, and he says, we encounter the temptation to build a culture walls. Where are the walls? Walls in our heart, walls on our land, in order to prevent an encounter with other cultures, with other people. This is strong, those who raise walls will end up as slaves within the very walls they have built. So we are building walls, and those walls are now enslaving us. Those walls are not just to keep people out, but it is blocking our hearts. We are scared, we are terrified of people who are not, they don't have our own culture, they don't have our own way of thinking, and we are not ready to see what these people are going through. Pope Francis tells us we need to now break down these walls. He says that right now when we look at people, we see many within our own country as foreigners. Though they are citizens, they are foreigners. What does he mean by that? They are with us, and yet we don't consider them part of us. He mentioned the disabled. He mentioned those who are unborn. He mentioned the seniors, the elderly, who sometimes we think now they are no use at all. He says, and therefore, the whole idea, and he's strong on this, the slide has not come on the screen, is this throwaway culture. Anyone, first of all, it starts with things, and that's why we have what's happening in the world right now, the environmental crisis, starting with things, ending up with people. Ultimately, it will end up with people in your own home. You are no use to me, so I throw you away. So this is what we are seeing around the world right now. Some of the slides are missing, I'm sorry. He says we are all in the same boat. In today's world, the sense of belonging to a single human family is fading. What reigns instead is a cool, comfortable, and globalized indifference. Thinking that we are all powerful while failing to realize that we are all in the same boat. We are all sinking in the same boat together because we refuse to work together. But Pope Francis doesn't give up hope. He says, despite these dark clouds, I invite everyone to renewed hope, to advance along the paths of hope. That is the Christian understanding. A Christian is never in despair. We always have hope because of the resurrection. So the first lens that he gives us from the spiritual exercises, the Trinity looking down, and what do they see? The second lens he gives us, and what is the second lens that he gives us? The story of the Good Samaritan, stranger along the road. This, I think, is the heart of the document. The first is to see the signs of the time, what is happening around us. The second is the very heart, the heartbeat of the document. And Pope Francis once again uses an Ignatian spirituality and does an Ignatian contemplation of the Good Samaritan. So he gives many details. I'm not going to do all of them. The first thing he tells us is that, normally we look at the robbers and they say, these are the bad men who have hurt this person here lying on the road. But he says, the robbers are not the only ones. He says, the ones who passed by are allies of the robber. Those who refused to help, those who turned the other side, he says, those are allies of the robber. He even goes on saying, let's see if I have it here. Yeah. The question actually to the whole Good Samaritan story is, who is my neighbor? So that's why he actually is taking this over here. Who is my neighbor? And then he goes on speaking what I just said about a robber, and those who do not help are allies of the robber. We too, he says, can be like that. You can imagine now that priest and the Levite passing by and then going back home, and see what he says, and this is strong over here. I can't see it on the screen, you'll have to excuse me. We look at those who suffer without touching them. We televise live pictures of them, even speaking about them with euphemism and with apparent tolerance. So what happens? We'll sit at tables and we'll discuss about the problems, the situations, and we priests, we can preach about it without touching. And he's saying, we are exactly like the robbers. And all of us are falling in that category very often. We'll keep talking and reading about it in a paper, discussing it, but doing nothing. He says, we need to go and be like the Good Samaritan, reaching out. So what do we see then in the Good Samaritan story? The priest and the Levite did not help for obvious reasons. They had no time. They were busy. They had good work to do, very good work to do, but they had no time. He says, what about the Good Samaritan? If you take a look at the life of the Good Samaritan, it seems that he was also a busy man because he had to go on some business somewhere. But he stopped. And this is what Pope Francis is saying. We need to stop because persons are more important than time. The Good Samaritan realized, I need to help this man because he is my brother in need. The second thing he says, he gives many things, but I'm just picking out one or two of them. He says is, the Good Samaritan did his work. He did not post it on Facebook or WhatsApp, didn't tell anybody about it. He knew that he had to reach out, and that's all that matters. He worked simply, he did simply because there was a brother in need. So that is what it means. Reaching out because someone needs me. Pope Francis goes on speaking about the priest, and the other saying, quoting St. John Chrysostom. St. John Chrysostom challenged his Christian hearers. Do you wish to honor the body of the Savior? Do not despise it when it is naked. Do not honor it in church with silk vestments, while outside it is naked and numb with cold. What is he saying is, to be religious is to reach out and touch people in need. The priest, the Levite, they were good people, but they thought their religion ended only in church. He's saying, no, we need to show our religion in practice. We need to go out and help. Everybody is busy, but how can we reach out and help? So, in the face of so much pain and suffering, our only course is to imitate the Good Samaritan. Any other decision would make us either one of the robbers or one of those who walked by without showing compassion for the sufferings of the man on the roadside. So then we have to now decide, what do we do? There are only two options. Either be the Good Samaritan who sees everybody, our brother and sister, need, or walk on the other side. That is the only option, two options that we had. And he ultimately says, now you go. Who is my neighbor? Now you go and do likewise. So he challenges each one of us now to go and do likewise. As I said, this and the previous chapter were lenses to see the whole world. So first, the darkness, and then how we can be light by being Good Samaritan. All that follows right now is nothing other than an interpretation of putting the Good Samaritan into practice in our daily lives, starting with our brother next door, and then the whole world, and ultimately the whole of creation. As he says, the decision to include or exclude those lying wounded along the roadside can serve as a criterion for judging, now see what? Judging what? Every economic, political, social and religious project. Each day we have to decide whether to be Good Samaritan or indifferent bystanders. So all of us have the option. What do we want to choose? And then we have the chapters that go. There are total 8 chapters. The first 2 chapters I took as a lens to help you understand the rest of the document. Actually, with these 2 chapters, you understand and now can put into practice the rest. This document, my dear brothers and sisters, truly is a new way of living our lives. This is the challenge Pope Francis is putting to us after this pandemic, or starting right now. Now that the pandemic is on, now what do we do? Let us look at each other as brothers and sisters. So we have chapter 3 coming up, which I will speak on a little more in detail. Envisaging and engendering an open world, a heart open to the whole world. I'll say more about it later, so I'll skip to chapter 5 and 6. 5 is on politics, but he applies the Good Samaritan story even there. And so political charity, how charity, starting off with touching and helping your neighbor next door, goes to the whole world. So he says, if you help a person to cross the river, that's wonderful. A politician builds a bridge and helps a person to cross the river. So it's the same thing, only a larger level. Charity in politics. Chapter 6, dialogue and friendship in society, reaching to the peripheries, dialoguing with people who are different from us and reaching to those who are furthest and need us most of all. Paths of renewed encounter, peace, working for peace no matter where. And here he speaks on 2 very, very important topics of a just war and death penalty. Again, being a Good Samaritan to those who have been given a death penalty. And then he speaks, what should we do in such a situation? Simply, again, being Good Samaritan. Did I skip it? Chapter 8, religions at the service of fraternity in our world. How can all religions now work together as brothers and sisters. Again, taking on from the Good Samaritan, and therefore about religious freedom and tolerism and terrorism. Let us now I skipped out a slide, I think. Unfortunately, some of the slides are not showing, so I don't know what we have missed out or not. Yeah, this is chapter 3. Some slides have skipped out over here on the PowerPoint on the projection. He says, this is chapter 3. Our world's now opening out to include everybody. How to expand our worlds, how to expand our heart. What does he say over here? He says, we cannot live our individual lives alone. If we live our individual lives alone, we will atrophy and we'll die. We need each other. We know that there's a true story told. They're told that in a certain tribal place, if they wanted to put someone to death, it was very simple. All they did was take that person and place them outside the tribe. That's it. The person would die. We need each other. On our own, we can't manage. We think right now with our individualism we are managing, but see the state of each one of us. See the amount of counselors and psychiatric treatment and such kind of things. Not just one or two persons. All of us are suffering, including me. All of us are suffering from the same sickness of individualism. So he says we need each other not only to survive, but to grow and even to know who we are. We can know ourselves better only by our brothers and sisters who tell us and show us and encourage us and bring out the very best in us. So he will go on saying, human beings are so made that they cannot live, develop and find fulfillment except in the sincere gift of self to others. It's only when we give ourselves to others, then can we really grow to the fullness. Our very nature is to reach out or we atrophy. Now what we very often think is, okay, I have my family. I'm reaching out to my family. That's good. A husband and wife, we love each other. That's good. But he says, even a couple who's very loving but remain closed within that circle, even a family that's very loving but remain closed within their family, he's saying is not good. Because again, they're built walls. They don't talk to this one, they don't talk to that one. They're built walls and ultimately they will die within those walls, die from the inside. And therefore he says we need to expand the borders. Be Good Samaritan. Start moving out from the couple, the family, now going out to others. And he will speak of a universal love. Rights without borders. Love also impels us towards universal communion. No one can mature or find fulfillment by withdrawing from others. By its very nature, love calls for growth in openness and the ability to accept others as part of a continuing adventure that makes every periphery, look at this, that makes every periphery converge in a great sense of mutual belonging. As Jesus told us, you are all brothers and sisters. So we need to move and expand our horizons. Start moving out to others, to everyone. Starting, he said we can't live on our own. We need couples, families, but from there we move beyond and ultimately taking the whole of creation under our care, where we see everybody as brothers and sisters. He says if we don't reach out to them, as St. John Chrysostom says, not to share our wealth with the poor is to rob them. The riches we possess are not ours, our own, but theirs as well. That's what St. John Chrysostom tells us. So what is Pope Francis telling us? Take a look at the world. See what's happening right now. Take a look at the Gospels. What is the answer the Gospel is giving us? Who is your brother? Who is your neighbor? And the answer is, anybody in need is my brother and my sister. The Good Samaritan story now Pope Francis takes and he expands it, and he says from your family, from couple to family to neighbors, and he keeps going on. I'm not giving you all the slides, and ultimately taking in the whole world and ultimately even the whole of creation. So he says, you may be in a place where you have enough water, but because I know at another end of the earth there is scarcity of water, I will use my water resources carefully the way I use my water, so that the water I have here can be of use in some other place. And then you apply it to everything else. Now in chapter 4, Pope Francis takes on a very specific topic, one very dear to his heart, and one which is a big need at the moment. A heart open to the whole world. And what is he speaking of right now is migrants. The true worth of different countries of our world is measured by their ability to think not simply as country, but also as part of the larger human family. Pope Francis is challenging us. This is many countries, and all of us actually are scared. Migrants, different. What will they bring in? What do they have? Will they be a threat? He says, no. They're brothers and sisters, and I'm going to show that to you a little more closely, not through words, but in a different way. So, right now, just last year, the UN gave us statistics. There are 272 million migrants around the world. 272. Now, what is Pope Francis saying? Okay, migrants, so everybody is accepted? No, first, and the most obvious thing is, he says, we must see how to stop migration. Why are people migrating? So first see in their own countries, what is the cause of it? And then see from this side how you can start helping in one way or the other. So just migration and helping, no. First see how you can solve the problem. Now very often, and this is most of the migrants are fleeing from their country because of various reasons, religious, for political reasons, racism or whatever. They are migrating from one place to the other. And therefore he says, what do we need to do? And the answer is, Pope Francis says, we need to reach out and help. Take a look at this slide over here. I thought pictures would be much better than words. Here you see this lady with two little children. Those are not just two children. That is your wife and your children. Your neighbor, your relative. Walking miles and miles and miles. And this picture, I want you to just pause in it and look at it a little longer. This is your child, washed upon the shore dead. Pope Francis says, very often we look at other persons, migrants, as outsiders. They are there. No, they are my brother, my sister. Brother, sister, all. That child is mine. How would the parent of this child react when they saw this photograph? And so Pope Francis tells us, he gives us 4 words: welcome, protect, promote, and integrate. Welcome, open our borders. Remember, he's not just saying open, first see how we can stop migration one way or the other. And for this he said, sometimes countries alone can't do it. We need the whole world, therefore the whole world is called to be brothers and sisters. How can we solve this problem? He says we need to create a kind of global body to help in this direction. So welcome, and then he gives practical ways, making visas more easily available and citizenship and others. Protect. By protect, he says, protect them once they come in. They shouldn't be just seen as outsiders, giving them all the rights, all their dues, education and shelter in one way or the other. Promote, not just giving them the basics, but also let them live full human lives. They are our brothers and sisters all. And finally, he says integrate. So finally, they should be like one of us. And not just like one of us. We take the best that is in them for us, and we share the best that is with us with them. And so ultimately, who's helped? Everybody is helped by this exchange. By this exchange. He says, very often this kind of integration and welcome might initially, it'll have to be where we are doing a favor, which seems like a favor. But ultimately, all of us are being helped. Why? Because we are brothers, sisters, all. The ultimate criteria, he says, is the spiritual status. What is your love level? Is your love just within your family and your neighborhood? He says, the spiritual stature of a person's life is measured by love, which is the criterion for the definitive decision about a human life's worth. I repeat, the spiritual stature of a person's life is measured by love, which is a criterion for the definitive decision about a human life's worth. So what is the worth of your life? Not all the big works that we do, all the buildings that we build, all the massive jobs. No. Ultimately, answering who is my brother, who is my neighbor, who is my sister, and reaching out, starting out at the smallest level in charity, and then letting charity go on to the largest level, including the whole world. With this, my dear friends, I come to the end of this little sharing. I've given you a kind of overview, the two lenses, remember. What is the situation and what is our Christian response to who is my neighbor, brother, sister, all. We need each other, and therefore now we come to the end with a prayer that Pope Francis gives us at the end of the document, which I thought we could pray together. Lord Father of our human family, you created all human beings equal in dignity. Pour forth into our hearts a fraternal spirit and inspire in us a dream of renewed encounter, dialogue, justice and peace. Move us to create healthier societies and a more dignified world, a world without hunger, poverty, violence and war. May our hearts be open to all the peoples and nations of the earth. May we recognize the goodness and beauty that you have sown in each of us, and thus forge bonds of unity, common projects, and shared dreams. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.